worship with us this morning. Welcome you, especially if you're a visitor. Glad you could be here today. Some will come back who used to be here, but you're here also. Let's take a look at our announcements. Don't forget that there's this little tear-off sheet on the side of your bulletin. If you want to get in touch with anyone, you have prayer concerns, rip that out and go and put that in the prayer plate. So today we are blessed by the presence of the Watkins family, and we're going to have a reception for them afterwards. Nate's going to be speaking, and he's going to introduce his family in a little bit. So please plan to stay for that afterwards. Most of the things that are happening normally during the year aren't happening anymore because we're finally into the summer. So, yay. A lot of things are not happening that normally are. There are a couple of things in the bulletin here. Women's Fellowship is having a yard sale here at the church on the 5th and 6th, which happens to be this weekend. So bring your clean unwanted treasures by Thursday this week. If you help set up Thursday, or be here at 10 to sale Friday and Saturday, CDNC. Looks like other announcements are lining up, so we'll let them go.
For BDS, we need 80 water bottle tops. So if you can start saving those as you're drinking your water, bring them in, that'd be great. And we still need people to sign up for some of the things out there that we need, some supplies, and people to still keep those 2 extra people playing those contestants. So keep that in mind.
Just a real quick heads up, and I want to say thank you for your patience on the Sunday school rules. Hopefully, the material will get ordered this week. It's kind of a special order because we're putting that storage unit above it, so it's got to be a heavier gauge steel studding. So they got a special order that, but hopefully it'll be in within the next week or two, and the team will coordinate to start putting that together. But I still ask for your continued patience, okay? So we're doing this. And, no, hey, we're moving forward. So,
so keep the Vacation Bible School in your prayers. That is 2 weeks away, so that's coming right up. So be prepared for that. There's a note about the furnishings for the atrium. If you want to be a part of that, donating to that, make sure you do that. Also, the Northwood Church, the 5th Sunday of the month, always does a gospel sing. They are doing that this evening at 6:30. So go sing some gospel music, and then there's an ice cream and social afterwards. So that even makes it better. I think that's all the announcements that we need to make. So let's stand together as we read God's Word. Our unison reading today comes from Psalm 145. Let's read this together.
I will exalt you, my God the King. I will praise your name forever and ever. Every day I will praise you and extol your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. No generation commends your works to one. They tell of your mighty acts. They speak of the glorious splendor of your majesty, and I will meditate on your wonderful works. They tell of the power of your awesome works, and will proclaim your great deeds. They celebrate your abundant goodness, and joyfully sing of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. All your works praise you, Lord. Your faithful people extol you.
May the Lord have a blessing to read this word. Remain standing as we worship. This is Nate Watkins, and he's going to introduce his name.
Is this mic on? Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. My name is Nate. I'm officially Nathan, but please call me Nate. Miller's Nathaniel here, right? He is officially Little Nate. Right? That's what we decided on. So I have my wife, Rocio. We met in college 31 years ago, and we've been married 28. We got married at 9 years old. I have 3 sons. My oldest is a second lieutenant, Air Force, and he just graduated from the Air Force Academy, and he's headed to Mississippi Pilot School. And so he is not here this week. My middle son is Noah, and he'll play a little keyboard later after the sermon, and he is on his way to West Point tomorrow and to serve in the Army. And we'll see exactly how that goes. My youngest son, Carson, he is 16, and he's going to be a junior this coming year in high school. And he's our basketball star. And then we have a 9-year-old Boston Terrier, who is the ugliest dog known to man, but we love her, and she's part of our family. And then we have an evil cat, which only likes women. And since we have 4 guys in our family, you can see that there's only one person that has a cat. That is still being debated. Yeah, we have a conflict right now between whether the cat can travel or not. I'm pretty sure she can't. But my wife is pretty sure she can.
9 lives.
So I would put that on your prayer list because that would be awesome. I mean, it could be devastating if we had to leave her behind. Anyway, that's us. Thank you for having us this week. It's been great.
So the Watkins have been here since Tuesday night, Wednesday. We've seen a lot of different parts of the church, a lot of different parts of the community, and so continue praying. You know how the Lord is going to lead us, and whether we call them or not, and whether the Lord calls them here. So let's pray together. Lord, we thank you for your love for us, and again, we thank you, Lord, you have a plan for us, that you go before us, that you never leave us. Lord, we thank you as we go through this time of, as we've been searching for a pastor, and Lord, we just thank you that you have given us your guidance. We thank you that you have brought us to this point, and we just pray that you'll continue to guide us. Show us your will, speak to us, speak to the Watkins family, Lord, that your will will be done above everything else. We thank you that for the great times that we've had this week with them. And Lord, I just pray for this congregation. I just pray for your blessing on each one. For those, Lord, who are not well, not feeling well today, just pray you touch on them, touch them physically. For those who are going through difficult situations, Lord, I just pray that you'll speak into those situations too. We know there are some addictions. There are people who are having issues with relationships. Lord, I just pray that you will speak into those relationships. Help us, Lord, as your hands and feet to be a part of that, to help ease these situations and to make your name glorified and to show them your love. Lord, I pray for those who are speaking around the country, around the world right now, are giving forth your message. We just pray, Lord, that you will speak to them, prepare the hearts of the people to hear what you have to say, and prepare our hearts today to hear what you have to say through Nate. And now, Lord, we just ask your blessing again on this service, and just thank you for your Holy Spirit here. Help us to really worship you, to understand who you are, and praise your name. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. So, here I am in Walton, New York, a small rural town in upstate New York, right? And I'm about 3,000 miles away from our hometown of Upland, California. Your landscape is very green. Ours is very brown. Your weather is very wet, and ours is extremely dry. You have one day or 1 week of sunshine like this past week, and you rejoice. We have about 300 days of this weather, and we don't think about it at all. You have very few cars on the road, no traffic as we were getting around town, and we have about 1 million. You have 3,500 people or so in population. We have 78,000 in our little town. Your air quality is right around 88%, with 100% being perfect. Ours is 28%. 98%. Older folks and little dogs are supposed to stay inside on those days, otherwise they can pass away. You have about, your average home price is about $115,000, and ours is $579,000. Your household median income is somewhere around $34,000, and ours is double that, $68,000. And you've got the Knicks, and we've got the Lakers. Comparison is interesting, right? I've done a lot of it this week, and it can either make you feel really good or it can make you feel really bad, depending on what you're comparing. So this whole week I've thought a lot about the nature of comparison. I mean, is it good? Is it bad? Is it helpful? Is it actually hurtful? And I wondered, how does Jesus feel about all that? How does Jesus feel about comparison? And I was led to a story in the Gospel of John that speaks to this issue. So if you have your Bible, you can turn to John chapter 20. And does anyone know offhand what the big event was that happened in John chapter 20? The biggest event in human history. Anyone? Resurrection of Jesus? Yeah. Resurrection. This is John chapter 20. And it begins on that Sunday, Easter Sunday, and the day Jesus was resurrected from the dead. So I'm going to start reading in verse 1, and it's going to be up here on the screen for you. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Okay, so let's just stop right there for a moment. Back in those days, it was really popular for writers, if they were part of the narrative, to refer to themselves somewhat indirectly. If they were actually part of the story they were telling, they try to not use their own name, try to figure out a different way to indicate their role in the text. So in this case, right, the Apostle John is writing this gospel, this narrative, and he's actually part of the story. And so throughout the book, he's referring to himself in a couple different ways. One is as one of the sons of Zebedee, which is his dad. Another time, like in here, the other disciple, or the disciple that Jesus loved. This is how John referred to himself. And, it's kind of considered a humble way to speak of oneself in the story. Except that last one, the disciple that Jesus loved, is not really very humble, is it? This is how John refers to himself often throughout this gospel, and I find it really interesting. I mean, one of my sons referred to themselves as the boy that Dad loved, or the son that Mom loves the most. We wouldn't think it's very humble, right? But this is actually how John refers to himself. So it immediately sets up a comparison with the others. Now, what exactly is John saying here? That Jesus didn't love the other disciples? Or perhaps that he loved John a little bit more than the rest? Or that John was special? Anyway, let's keep going with the story. Verse 3. So Peter went out with the other disciples of John. And they were going toward the tomb. And both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. So who won the foot race to the tomb? John. Yeah. So not only did Jesus love John more, he also was the faster runner. Right? And that little detail is kind of just tossed into the end, and he reached the tomb first. Right? Now, what does it sound like is actually happening between Peter and John? A little competition, right? Kind of a rivalry there. All right, keep going here. Verse 4. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. And then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. And he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. So John had reached the tomb first, and then followed Peter into the tomb, and then John believed first. Right? So he was not only the disciple Jesus loved the most, he was not only the fastest runner, he was also the one who was first to believe. I mean, isn't it fascinating at the sight of the most important event in human history? that John throws in these kind of petty comparisons. But it wasn't actually only John. Let's move ahead to the end of the Gospel, chapter 21, and we see Peter get something in. Verse 15, Jesus had just fixed breakfast for his disciples. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And he said to them, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to them, "Feed my lambs." Jesus said to him the second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." So most scholars think that Jesus asked him 3 times because Peter had denied Jesus 3 times just a little bit ago. Right? So Jesus was probably just trying to build Peter back up after that kind of huge letdown. And the idea of feed my sheep is the pastoral task of leadership that Jesus was calling Peter into. The Gospel of Matthew speaks of how Jesus had once had said that upon Peter he would build his church. That Peter was significant to Jesus' plan going forward. And so perhaps, after the denial episode, maybe Peter thought that he had been disqualified because of that. Or, he was no longer worthy in Jesus' eyes. But Jesus reaffirms Peter's call to pastoral leadership, to be a servant leader taking care of the sheep. And then Jesus goes further, and he lets Peter know that not only will he be the lead shepherd, but that he also would lay down his life in that service. Starting in verse 18. "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, Peter, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, "Follow me." Okay, so all that was really powerful stuff, reaffirming Peter's call to the ministry and even letting him know that the price that he was going to pay as it goes into it. And what is Peter's response? Verse 20. Peter turned and saw the other disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back against him during supper and said, "Lord, who is betrayed you?" And when Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" This is a sacred, holy moment for Peter, forgiven for denying Jesus, given the opportunity to lead. And what is he concerned with? John. So you sense the comparison that's going on between these two. One was more loved, he was faster, quicker to believe, and the other, was chosen to lead. Chosen to follow his master into death. And what was his concern with the other guy? And here is Jesus' response. This is really important, verse 22. And Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that you remain until I come, what is that you come?" What is that? And what does it matter what happens to John? You need to think about you. You follow me. And you notice the exclamation point at the end of that, right? Jesus was getting a little bit emotional, getting a little fired up here as he says it, right? Peter, what does it matter to you? Right? John's path, that shouldn't matter to you. Worry about your own path. You follow me. Right? You be faithful on your own path. So the story fascinates me. And so I began wondering if there was other places in the Gospels where this tendency to compare got Peter and John into trouble. And it turns out there is. Matthew 19. This is the story of the rich young ruler. And I'll read the story and we'll get to the point that I'm trying to make here. First, starting at verse 16. "And behold, a man came up to Jesus, saying, 'Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life?' And he said to him, 'Well, why do you ask me what is good? There is only one who is good. If you would enter life, keep the commandments.' He said to him, 'Which ones?' And Jesus said, 'You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself.' And the young man said to him, 'All of these I have kept. What do I still lack?' And Jesus said to him, 'If you would be perfect, go and sell what you possess and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me.' And when the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possession. And Jesus said to his disciples, Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished, saying, who then can be saved? But then Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible, with God all things are possible. Then Peter said in reply, see, Lord, we have left everything and have followed you. What then will we have? Comparison. Right? Peter's saying, well, unlike that rich young fool, we've given up everything to follow you. Aren't we special people? Don't we deserve something special? That rich guy couldn't do it, but we can. Aren't we going to receive some kind of reward for that? See, in a world full of comparison, in a world that teaches us from the first moments of life to compare ourselves against everyone else, in order to see if we're good enough or smart enough or good looking enough or successful enough or righteous enough, Jesus corrects our thinking by telling Peter and John that they each have their own path to follow. They each have their own set of issues, yes, of course. Strengths, weaknesses, trials, temptations, they all have unique paths. And God is not comparing them to each other. God judges each person according to what they have done on their own unique path, not in comparison to what everyone else has done. If you look at the parable that immediately follows that one on the rich young ruler, that episode, this is in chapter 20 of Matthew, you will see this exemplified. Jesus is speaking. He says, for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. And after agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them out into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to them he said, you go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you. So they went, and going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing by. He said to them, why do you stand here idle all day? And they said to them, because no one has hired us. And he said to them, well, you go to the vineyard too. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last, up to the first. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. But when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more. But each of them also only received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, these last guys only worked about an hour, but you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. But the owner said to them, friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree to work all day for one denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity? And why were the workers so bothered? Comparing what they got against what the others got, in comparison to the amount of work that they put in. Right? And Jesus tells us through this story that he's not comparing any one of us to anyone else. We are individuals given a unique path. We are individuals called to serve him in unique ways. Jesus calls us to follow him, no one else. Jesus calls us to follow his voice, no one else. To use the talents and the skills and the experiences and the resources we have been given. Don't worry about what everyone else has. Comparison, it cripples our ability to follow Jesus carefully and to be faithful. That's how I make it fun. A comparison cripples our ability to follow Jesus carefully and to be faithful. And in the church, it's really easy to compare against other churches. Not just here in Walton, but around the state, around the country. And why can't we have as many people as they do? Other churches in town are saying, why can't we have a new facility like First Baptist Walton? Why do they have better property than us? Why do they have so many staff? How do they have so much money? Why can't we do what they do? Why can't we offer the programs they do? Why is God appearing to bless them more than God blesses us? And Jesus says to us, what is that to you? You follow me. First Baptist Walton, what is it to you what other churches are doing in America? What other churches are planning, or how many people are attending, or what kind of programming they've got? What is that to you? Jesus says, social media has made this infinitely worse for all of us today. We're now aware, like never before, what everyone else is doing at any given moment. What they're wearing, right? What they're eating, how they're succeeding, how their kids are just wonderful and succeeding all over the place. How they're looking at every moment. I mean, selfie culture has raised comparison to a whole other level. It's a problem, because comparison does not serve the will of God. And here's why. When you compare, either individually or corporately, only one of two options are the result. Either you understand yourself as being better off, which leads to pride. And pride's not a good thing for a follower of Jesus. Do you remember the story Jesus told about the two men who went to the temple to pray? One was a religious leader, and the other was an IRS agent, right? Tax collector. And both began to pray. What was the first thing the religious leader did in his prayer? He thanked God that he was not like that guy. Right? Through comparison, he became proud. He felt better about himself, and he actually pitied the other man. And when we pity, we cannot love because we feel superior. On the other hand, if you realize in your comparison that you are not better off, but you're actually worse off than the other person or the other church or whatever it might be, the result is discontent. You find yourself discontent with who you are, what you have, what God has done for you. We become discontent with the skin that God has given us, with the few talents, with the introverted personality. You know, as an introvert, comparison makes me very discontent. Because extroverts tend to get all the glory, they get all the great jobs. This is the truth that I've kind of experienced in my life as a pastor. You know, all the most famous worship leaders in America are extroverts. They bounce all over the stage like cheerleaders. Right? All the big speakers and preachers and teachers, they are all extroverts. They have an amazing ability to articulate and they just feel charisma is just pouring off them like water. They nail their interviews, right? They woo people with their charm and laughter. So here I am, the opposite. Comparison, when I make it leads me to discontent with how God has made me, who God has called me to be, all that. And I wonder, Lord, what about him? Well, what about her? Why is, my career gone the way it's gone? Why does she have so much money? Why aren't my kids as talented as theirs? Aren't we serving you faithfully? Discontentment, it cripples our ability to follow Jesus carefully and to be faithful. Because discontentment festers and eventually it becomes bitterness. Bitterness robs joy. Even with God's help. So Jesus calls us to follow him and to leave all of our comparative concerns, our feelings, our fears, our reliance on talent or personality, our sense of superiority, whatever it is. Jesus simply asks, what is it to you? What others have? You follow him. But I'd like to probe deeper for just a moment. Okay? Because I've wondered to myself, can I actually really give up comparison? Is it actually possible to do that? It turns out our brains are actually wired to compare and contrast. Right? God actually made us that way. We can't actually just turn off our brain. A brain that was built for assessing situations. It's a fundamental schema of our cognition. To be human in some sense is to have the ability to compare and contrast and to evaluate and discern and to test and form conclusions. Comparison is actually how God made us. Christians are called in the New Testament to test the spirits, to figure out stuff, right? And that uses your ability to compare and contrast. So even though Peter and John were both being chastised by Jesus for comparing themselves to each other or being concerned with each other, that process isn't always bad, right? Sometimes comparison can challenge us to maybe stop being lazy. Comparison can push ourselves to the next level. Sometimes comparison teaches us where we are wrong or where we are weak. Sometimes it challenges us to be more decisive. All kinds of good things we can learn through comparison. So I think it's simply unrealistic to say, I'm going to give up comparing today. That's just impossible. Right? We are built to compare. Our brains are going to compare regardless of what Jesus says. What is that to you? We can't stop comparing. But I do think there is a few things we can do to turn our comparative tendencies into something good in God's mind. I'm going to give you one of those this morning. It's something that I've found that's really helped me to turn my destructive comparative tendencies into something healthy and useful. And that is that when we compare ourselves to someone else, we need to focus on similarities, not differences. Similarities. And this is really the difference between comparing and contrasting. Because it's actually contrasting when we're looking at the differences. But for those of you who have a TV, your contrast ratio is the difference between the whitest white and the blackest black. The bigger the ratio, the better your screen is going to look. Right? That's your contrast. And so, as you contrast, you're looking for differences. And interpersonally, when we focus on the difference between ourselves and someone else, it leads us to decide if we're better or worse, which leads to pride or discontentment. True comparison, on the other hand, is looking for similarities. What two objects or two people or two organizations, what do they hold in common? And what are the ways in which we are the same as that other person? Even if our paths are very different, what do we actually have in common? Even if our strengths and weaknesses are very different in terms of talent or experience or whatever it might be, how are we alike? That's actual comparison. The other is contrast. When we look for similarities, we are forcing our brain to look at the other person through a lens of equality, not inequality. How are we the same? What is it that we actually share? So the parable of the workers of the field, back in Matthew 20, the disgruntled workers, they were focused on the different amounts of time they had worked and the different amounts they were getting paid, or actually the same amounts they were getting paid that bothered them greatly because they had worked different times. And what had actually popped in their head is, hey, that's not fair. But what if they had chosen to focus on the similarities instead? With all those different workers who had been, all throughout the day, had been scheduled, and they all ended up the same pay, what might they have had to celebrate if they looked at the similarities? Well, they all had work that day, right? That's awesome. They all got to get paid, which means everyone could eat tonight, and your families could have clothes tomorrow, right? They all benefited from the generosity of the master. And the story of Peter John, racing to the tomb. How might John have framed that story in a way that actually highlighted the similarities rather than the differences? Well, John could have written it this way. Instead of saying, I'm the one Jesus loved most, that was the fastest runner and the one who was quickest to believe, he could have noted that both Peter and I heard some amazing news. We both ran to the tomb, we both went inside, we both came to believe. Isn't that incredible? Doesn't that change the whole nature of the story? And we always have a choice when our brains begin to compare and contrast, whether we contrast or whether we just compare. One is about differences, the other is about similarities. As a church, do we look at all the ways we are different from the other churches in town? Let those differences divide us. Or do we look for the similarities and look for something that is equal between us? I can tell you only one of those options actually is following Jesus. Only one of them leads to a sense of joy and a sense of gratitude. Jesus died for all of us. Even because God loved all of us. And even though all of us are sinners, there's no righteous, no not one, right? He died for all of us, and we are all depending on God's grace. Those are our similarities. Focusing on differences is not helpful most of the time. They simply make us prideful or discontent. But when we focus on commonalities, on similarities, what we share, we tend to find a well of gratitude bubbling up for what God has actually done. Thankfulness that all of us actually get paid at the end of the day. So you might wonder what a pastor from California thinks of the people of Wall Street. What does a pastor like me think of a church like this? Well, I see the common bond that we share in Jesus. And I see the common love that we share for seeing His kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And I see men and women, boys and girls, families and singles committed to following Jesus and doing what He comes. And I find myself grateful. Thankful for the similarities and everything we share in Christ that enables a family like ours to travel 3,000 miles and yet do it. It's not because of the differences, it's because of what we share. God, you are the giver of life, the giver of all good things. You extended your hand toward us while we were still sinners, drowning in our own sorrow and grief and shame. We know that deep down inside, the appropriate response to all of that is prayers. Not worrying about everyone else, or the path that every other church is on, or what everyone else is doing with all their talents. What is that to us? Or what everyone else is doing with all their talents. What is that to us? We want to follow you and be faithful to you and what you've given. So forgive us for forgetting so quickly and so easily. And hear our praises now as we sing and speak. Pray this in your name.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Sing with us, worthy.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
Jesus' name.
day today, and we're not done yet. So we invite you all to stay for lunch. Give the folks a few minutes to get everything all set. And we'll enjoy a great time together with the Watkins and with each other. They're going to be on their way to West Point later this afternoon. And so we just thank you so much for your time here with us. And we've had a great time. And we'll just continue to pray as God leads us together. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for just the way you love us. Lord, the way you made us, the way you put us together, and the place to be with us. Father, we just commit ourselves to follow you where you take us. And Lord, we pray you be with our fellowship as we eat together this afternoon. Lord, bless this food, the people that prepared it, and our fellowship together. In Jesus' name, amen. Dismissed.